GamerDude 2088, and I'm doing another discussion for the MLPCCG, which will make discussion number 4. In this discussion, I want to talk about the Faceoffs, double Faceoffs to be specific, and the MLPCCG. And what made me really want to do this, well, I've been working on coming up with new discussion topics. I've been doing this for a little while. That's why I haven't really been posting anything, just trying to come up with new things, and so I can have some consistency with my posts, so I don't have to really do too much thinking. But anyway, so why not have any other better time to just do this now? And I want to touch on the face-offs in the game just because a lot of times I saw myself losing games because I triggered a double face-off when I shouldn't. Even when I play against other people, they trigger a double face-off when they shouldn't, which puts me in a good position to win a game. Sometimes that be the only deciding factor in a game, a losing game, and generally, like I said in previous video, by the 7th turn, I normally know if I'm going to win or lose. And my opponent can throw away a whole game just because they triggered a double face-off and they expended all their resources doing so. And I'm going to show you a few examples I came up with. The score, your opponent has 10. I think I'm doing this right. No, your opponent has 11. Opponent has 11, and you have 9. And let's say you both have low problems, and you have about 7, or so let's say you have about 7. You have more than them currently, and you scored whatever whatever scenario for last turn, and now you put it at you put them at 11, and your opponent banked their they say they banked their 5, and it's your turn, and you had your 1, and now you had your 6, and you kind of set up. Let's say you have Cloud Chaser at home, and you exhaust Cloud Chaser to play your Holly Dash to confront. And mind you, your opponent still has that 5. And you score, gaining your 4, putting you to 13 or so. Or let's say you had 10 instead and putting you to 14. And when you flip into, let's say, some big problems. A big problem. Let me find something with a 3. You flip a big problem, and your opponent has that 5. Your opponent has that 5, and doesn't matter what your problem is. Okay, here's a big one for you too. But your opponent has a big problem. They still have those 5 resources, and now all they have to do is make one confront on either your problem or theirs and win the game. And okay, let's say they have that and this setup and a Cloud Chaser at home, and they came to the 5 with 10, so they spin. Let's say they go to, wow, okay, that's expensive. But let's say, okay, they go to their problem, and they play 1, exhaust, Cloud Chaser, play the Sugar Twist, and they win the game because you triggered a double face-off last turn, and you already have, and the score is already over 11 points. anytime you're over 11 points, you're in big trouble. And double face-offs, if you're not going to win the game, double face-offs is definitely not what you want to go to. And you put yourself in a position where you only scored and got 14 points, and your opponent still wins. And that's a lot. That happens quite often. I saw it happen to others, and it happened to me plenty of times where I score and I only can get 14 points, and my opponent wins that next turn because I made the mistake of triggering that double face-off too early. But let's say we have another scenario where your opponent has about 4 tokens and you just got your turn. You banked your 4 last turn and you have your 4 for this turn. You have 8. The score is your opponent 8 and you 7. And this is kind of like your setup coming into this turn, and your opponent is already confronting on this problem. So they already took the bonus there. And really what you're trying to do is just get the trigger to double face off. The bonus here hasn't been taken. And you have your 8. I think I want to say 8. Might want to change that, depending on how you bank, because banking is key, especially going into a double face-off. You want to put yourself in a position where your opponent, even if they can confront the new problem, or they can end up triggering a double face-off, it doesn't hurt you. So let's say you exhaust your cloud chaser and pay 2, and then you got your net weaver there, and so now you confronting here where you got face off going and you still want your double. So you pay another 2 and got your sugar twist here. So you're set up pretty good for your double. And all of these are in the scenario that you win the face-off, but the outcome is still, the previous ones, the outcome was bad, and this one you win the face-off, but the outcome is good. Because, okay, now you score your 2 points for both problems, plus the bonus that it has been claimed. Let's say they both have already been claimed. It's just you're no longer confronting that problem on some early game stuff. And this problem you confront, and then now you're confronting for this turn, which triggers your double face off, and you flip and all of that, and now you score 5 points, which puts you at 12, and now you're getting 5. So your opponent has a chance, and when you flip, let's say you don't necessarily get anything big, and even if you do, your opponent gets 5 from the 2 that they had banked from the previous turn, and only gives them 7. So they'll be able to confront, even if they can confront both problems if possible. It more likely it will be low points, and if they only can confront one, the best they'll be able to do is tie the game. They won't be able to win. So you're still in good positioning. Even if they get another 3 and they're able to confront that, you're still in good positioning. And you only spent 3 points on this turn, and you had 8 to begin with. So you still got a lot left, which, since everything goes home, you're able to do more shenanigans coming into your next turn. And that puts you in good positioning because you can confront the next problem and just stay confronting, because you're a point ahead of your opponent. You're a point ahead of your opponent, and that will force your opponent to have to trigger a double face-off if they want to win the game. And all you're doing is banking. And if there is a high problem, you can bank for a turn, and that next turn trigger a double face-off and win the game. And that's kind of how it is, just setting yourself up for the victory. You always want to have more resources when you're going into a double face-off. Not saying just more in the sense of you can use more in the sense of you want to keep yourself above your opponent, especially if your opponent has a lot of resources. If they have anything over 2 resources, you kind of want to leave yourself with more than your opponent. Even if you just leave yourself with 1, and your opponent has 1 and you leave yourself with 1, that means your opponent comes into whatever they get for the turn, and you'll have the same on your turn. So whether your opponent plays something out on that turn, you're able to bank. And you're able to bank and sit on that if necessary, or play a card or 2 if you have to, which you shouldn't necessarily have to. You could just bank. And if you have a lot of resources, you can just play out what you need and to make sure you have victory in the double face-off, and sit on whatever else is left. Because if you have, say, 10 or so, and you only need to play 5 to trigger it, or let's say 7 at the most to make sure you have victory, and your opponent only has 1 resource, you still leaving yourself with 3. That puts you in a better position, because whatever your opponent receives on that turn, you're going to always have more than them, because you banked more coming into that face-off. And that's where it all, once again, that's just where it's at. It's just having more tokens to be able to do something. And that's just kind of what I wanted to touch on, far as just double face-offs, because you have your ups and your downs there, and you definitely don't want to trigger them when you don't have enough resources to keep yourself in the game, and especially if you're over 11 points, because getting 5 tokens a turn is real big. You can do a lot with 5 tokens each turn, and banking for 2 turns, that's 10 tokens. That's anything can happen. You can pretty much have a double face-off guaranteed after banking twice, and generally that's where games end it if you wasn't spending everything up to that point. So this is the Gamer Dude saying, finally back doing more pony vids, and look out for the next, because I want to touch on troublemakers. And I'm out of here.